Chapter 1, 48 Hours. Harlan Cannon had always prided himself on being a man who kept his word. As a structural engineer, he built his life the same way he designed buildings, with precision, integrity, and an unshakable foundation. His 16-year-old daughter, Sophie, inherited his discipline. She was home by curfew, maintained straight A's, and never gave him reason to worry. Until she wasn't home at all. The first night, Harlan waited by the door, his coffee growing cold. Evelyn, his wife of 18 years, sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, barely looking up. She's probably at a friend's house. You know how dramatic teenagers are. She would have called, Harlan said, dialing Sophie's number for the 15th time. Straight to voicemail. By morning, he'd already filed the missing persons report. Detective Orville Dixon took his statement with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd heard it all before. Young girl, good grades, strict father. Dixon's eyes said it all before his mouth did. Mr. Cannon, 90% of these cases, the kid shows up in a day or two. Usually some boy, some party, something they knew Dad wouldn't approve of. You don't know my daughter. Harlan's jaw tightened. Sophie wouldn't do this. Dixon shrugged. They never do, until they do. 48 hours later, the detective called. We're closing the case. All indicators point to a voluntary runaway. No signs of foul play, no evidence of abduction. Your daughter's probably crashing with friends. You can't do this. Harlan's voice was steel. She's 16 years old. You've barely started looking. I'm sorry, Mr. Cannon. We have limited resources. When she's ready to come home, she will. The line went dead. Harlan stood in Sophie's room, surrounded by her belongings. The robotics trophies, the calculus textbooks, the framed photo of the two of them at her first engineering competition. His little girl who wanted to build bridges, who called him every day after school to tell him about her day, who hadn't missed a Sunday dinner in 2 years. Evelyn appeared in the doorway. The police are right, Harlan. This is your fault. He turned slowly. Excuse me. Your rules. Your control. Her voice dripped with contempt. You suffocated her. No parties, no boyfriends. Home by 9. What did you expect? I expected her to be safe. You expected her to be perfect. Evelyn crossed her arms. Well, congratulations. You pushed her away. Something in her tone made Harlan's instincts flare. 20 years of reading structural weaknesses had taught him to spot fractures before they spread. His marriage had been cracking for months. Evelyn's late nights, her sudden obsession with the gym, the way she guarded her phone like it contained state secrets. Where were you that night? He asked quietly. What? When Sophie disappeared. You said you were at book club. I called Brenda Barnett. There was no book club. Evelyn's face flushed. I was at the gym. I forgot. The gym closes at 10. You didn't come home until midnight. Are you seriously interrogating me right now? Our daughter is missing, and you're worried about where I was? She laughed bitterly. You know what? I'm done. I want a divorce, Harlan. I want out of this controlling, suffocating marriage. She slammed the door, leaving him alone with his daughter's things and a growing sense that something was terribly, terribly wrong. Chapter 2, Fractures. The divorce papers arrived 3 days later, delivered by a smirking courier who looked barely older than Sophie. Evelyn had already moved out, staying at what she called a friend's apartment. She'd taken half their savings and hired Marlon Mooney, a shark of a divorce attorney known for destroying men in court. Harlan sat in his kitchen, the papers untouched beside his laptop. He'd spent the last 72 hours doing what the police wouldn't, actually investigating. He'd mapped Sophie's last known movements, interviewed her friends, checked her social media. Everyone said the same thing. Sophie was fine. Happy. Excited about her robotics tournament next month. Not the profile of a runaway. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop looking. She's gone. Let her go. Harlan's blood ran cold. He tried calling back. Disconnected number. He forwarded it to Detective Dixon, who responded with bureaucratic indifference. Probably a prank. Kids are cruel. But Harlan knew better. Someone wanted him to stop searching, which meant someone had something to hide. He started digging into Evelyn's life, feeling like a stranger exploring ruins. He'd been so focused on work, on Sophie, that he'd stopped seeing his wife. When had that happened? When had they become two people sharing a house, but not a life? Her credit card statements revealed a pattern. Regular charges at a restaurant downtown, Luigi's, an intimate Italian place they'd never been to together. A flower shop. A hotel, the Grandview, for separate occasions over the last 3 months. Always on nights, she'd claimed to be at book club or the gym. Harlan felt sick. An affair. Of course. But that didn't explain Sophie's disappearance. Unless. He pulled up the hotel's website and called the front desk. Hi, this is Harlan Cannon. My wife and I stayed there last month, and I think we left something in the room. Could you check your records? Certainly, sir. What name was the reservation under? Evelyn Cannon. Or maybe. He hesitated. Maybe under a different name. Can you check February 14th? A pause. Typing. I'm sorry, sir. I can't give out guest information without proper authorization. Of course. Thank you. He hung up, mind racing. He needed evidence. Real evidence. Something that would make the police listen, make them reopen Sophie's case. Something that would prove his daughter didn't run away. She was taken. That night, he went back to the house under the pretense of getting more of his belongings. Evelyn had changed the locks, but Harlan had designed the security system. He knew its weaknesses. The house felt hollow without Sophie's laughter, without the music she played too loud while doing homework. Evelyn's bedroom, formerly their bedroom, smelled different. Expensive perfume he'd never bought her. He checked her nightstand. Empty. Her closet was half-packed, clothes scattered like she'd left in a hurry. Harlan was about to leave when something made him pause. Sophie's room was across the hall. He stepped inside, drawn by instinct he couldn't explain. He'd searched this room a dozen times. But this time, he looked different. Not like a father looking for a runaway daughter. Like an investigator looking for evidence of a crime. The closet. He'd checked her clothes, her shoes. But had he checked behind the shoes? Harlan knelt down, pushing aside the sneakers and boots. His fingers brushed paper. He pulled out a crumpled note, the handwriting shaky but unmistakably Sophie's. Daddy, I'm scared. Help me. Actually, Mom, and... The note ended there, torn off mid-sentence. Harlan's heart hammered. His hands trembled as he read it again. Actually, Mom, and... Mom and who? Mom and what? He flipped the paper over. On the back, in different ink, like Sophie had written it at a different time. VI Silver Ridge Cabin. Insurance policy changed last week. I heard them talking. Please don't trust her. I think she's... The note ended again, ripped away. Harlan sat back on his heels, the world tilting sideways. VI. Those were initials. Silver Ridge. That was a mountain community 2 hours north, full of isolated vacation rentals. Insurance policy. His daughter hadn't run away. She'd been taken, and Evelyn was involved. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and photographed the note. Then he carefully folded it and put it in his jacket pocket. Evidence. Finally, he had evidence. But as he stood to leave, he heard the front door open downstairs. Harlan. Evelyn's voice, sharp with suspicion. What the hell are you doing here? Chapter 3. The Message. Harlan pocketed the note and stepped out of Sophie's room, his face carefully neutral. Evelyn stood at the bottom of the stairs, and she wasn't alone. A man lounged against the wall behind her, tall, dark-haired, with the kind of smile that made Harlan's fists clench. The stranger wore expensive clothes and cheaper morals. Vito Ibarra, the man said, extending a hand Harlan didn't take. I'm Evelyn's friend. VI. The initials from Sophie's note. Get out of my house, Evelyn said, her voice ice. You're not welcome here. Actually, Harlan said slowly, his mind calculating every angle. This is still half my house until the divorce is final. I'm collecting my belongings. At 10 o'clock at night? Without calling. Vito stepped forward, positioning himself protectively beside Evelyn. The gesture was territorial, possessive. That sounds like breaking and entering. I still have a key to my own home. Harlan kept his voice level, though fury burned beneath his skin. This man, this stranger, was standing in his house, beside his wife, while his daughter was missing. And Sophie's note suggested Vito was involved. Had a key, Evelyn corrected. I changed the locks. Whatever you used to get in here constitutes illegal entry. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. Harlan descended the stairs, his eyes locked on Vito. I'm sure they'd be interested to know about your friend here. About the Silver Ridge cabin. About what? Vito's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in his eyes. About how your wife finally found someone who doesn't treat her like property. Someone who doesn't interrogate her every move. Someone who helps her disappear teenage girls? The words were out before Harlan could stop them. The room went silent. Evelyn's face drained of color. Vito's smile vanished, replaced by something cold and dangerous. You're insane, Evelyn whispered. Sophie ran away because of you, and now you're creating conspiracy theories to avoid facing the truth. Am I? Harlan held up his phone, showing the photograph of Sophie's note, carefully angled so they could see the handwriting but not the full content. Then explain this. Found it in her room. In her handwriting. Dated the day she disappeared. He watched them both carefully. Evelyn's poker face was decent. Years of practice lying to him had honed her skills. But Vito's reaction was pure instinct. A quick glance toward Evelyn, a subtle stiffening of his shoulders. Guilt. Let me see that, Evelyn demanded, reaching for the phone. Harlan pulled it back. I don't think so. This is evidence. I'm taking it to Detective Dixon first thing tomorrow morning. That detective already closed the case, Vito said smoothly, recovering his composure. He's not going to reopen it because you found some dramatic teenage note. Kids say they're scared all the time of bad grades, of strict parents, of not fitting in. She mentioned you. Harlan lied, watching Vito's face. By name. Another flicker. Bingo. That's impossible, Evelyn said quickly. Sophie never met Vito. I kept my personal life separate from your daughter? Harlan finished. How thoughtful. Except Sophie did meet him. She knew something. Something that scared her enough to hide a note for me to find. You're delusional. But Evelyn's voice shook. Vito, call the police. I want him arrested for trespassing. Actually, a new voice said from the doorway. I think we should all calm down and talk this through. A woman stepped inside, mid-40s, sharp-eyed, wearing a business suit despite the late hour. She had the calculating gaze of someone who made a living from other people's misery. Rebecca Spence, she introduced herself, handing Harlan a card. I'm Miss Cannon's legal counsel. Mr. Cannon, you need to leave this property immediately, or I'll have you arrested. 3 lawyers for a simple divorce, Harlan observed. Marlon Mooney for the divorce proceedings, and now you for criminal matters. Interesting. What exactly are you all so worried about? Rebecca's smile was thin. Mr. Cannon, I understand you're going through an emotional time. But harassing your estranged wife, making wild accusations, breaking into her home, these actions won't help you find your daughter. They'll just land you in jail. Is that a threat? It's legal advice, given freely and in good faith. Her eyes were dead. Now leave, or I'll call the police myself. Harlan looked between the 3 of them, his wife, her lover, her lawyer, a united front, planning something, hiding something. He thought of Sophie's note. I'm scared. Help me. I'm going, he said. But I want you all to know something. I don't care about the affair. I don't care about the divorce or the money or any of it. All I care about is finding my daughter. And if any of you know where she is, if any of you have done anything to hurt her. He let the threat hang, unfinished but clear. Get out, Evelyn said, her voice breaking. For a moment, Harlan saw something in her face. Was it guilt? Fear? Regret? Then Vito's hand touched her shoulder, and the moment passed. Her expression hardened. Harlan left, but not before memorizing every detail. Vito's expensive watch, his Italian shoes, the rental car keys visible in his jacket pocket. Rebecca's briefcase, monogrammed with her firm's name. The way Evelyn wouldn't meet his eyes. He sat in his truck outside the house for a long moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Desmond Contreras? This is Harlan Cannon. We served together in the Corps back in '04. I need a favor, the kind you're particularly good at. Background checks, surveillance, the works. And Des. This one's personal. Chapter 4. Threads Unraveling. Desmond Contreras arrived at Harlan's apartment at dawn, carrying 2 coffees and a laptop that probably violated several federal laws. They'd served together in Marine Force Recon, before Des had gotten into the murkier side of information gathering and Harlan had gone legit with engineering. Vito Ibarra, Des said, pulling up a file. 42, born in Miami. Interesting guy. No job on record for the last 3 years, but he drives a BMW M8 and stays at the Grandview Hotel, $1,500 a night. Money's coming from somewhere. Harlan leaned forward. Criminal record? Clean. Too clean. Des clicked through screens. But he pops up in interesting places. 3 years ago, he was a consultant for a pharmaceutical company that got shut down for insurance fraud. 2 years ago, linked to a real estate scheme in Arizona, nothing stuck. Last year, He was dating a widow in Connecticut. She died 6 months into the relationship. Car accident. Convenient. Very. Des pulled up another file. But here's where it gets interesting. Her life insurance policy had been increased to $2 million just 3 months before her death. Vito was the beneficiary. Investigation was opened, then mysteriously closed. Insufficient evidence. Harlan's stomach dropped. Sophie's note mentioned an insurance policy. Said it was changed last week. Des's expression darkened. I already checked. Your daughter has a life insurance policy through your work, standard $50,000. But Evelyn took out an additional policy on Sophie 6 weeks ago. $1 million. Through a private insurer. Why would she? Harlan couldn't finish the thought. Couldn't let himself think it. There's more. Des pulled up bank records. Evelyn's been moving money. Small amounts, transferred to offshore accounts. Started 4 months ago, right around when she met Vito. She's been liquidating assets, selling jewelry, anything that won't trigger audit flags. She's planning to run. Looks that way. And Harlan. Des hesitated. The Silver Ridge cabin Sophie mentioned? It's registered to a shell company. Took me all night to track it, but I found the real owner. Vito Ibarra. Harlan stood, his mind racing. We need to get up there. Today. Hold on. Des grabbed his arm. You go charging into that cabin, you could spook them. Worse, you could endanger Sophie if she's there. We need to be smart about this. My daughter is depending on you to keep your head. Des's voice was firm. Listen to me. These people are professionals. Vito's done this before, getting close to women, manipulating them, then cashing in when convenient. But he's never been caught because he's careful. We need to be more careful. Harlan forced himself to sit down, to think like the engineer he was. Calculate the angles. Find the structural weakness. What do we know for certain? He asked. Des ticked off points on his fingers. Vito and Evelyn are in a relationship. They have access to a cabin in Silver Ridge. Evelyn took out a massive life insurance policy on Sophie. She's moving assets offshore. Sophie wrote a note saying she was scared and specifically mentioning Vito's initials and the cabin. She disappeared 4 weeks ago, and the police closed the case as a runaway. The police. Harlan's eyes narrowed. Dixon closed that case awfully fast. Even for a lazy cop, that was suspicious. You thinking what I'm thinking? Someone paid him off. Harlan pulled up his phone, scrolling through his photos until he found one from the police station. Dixon in the background, wearing a watch that didn't match his salary. Can you find out Dixon's financials? Already on it, Des said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Give me an hour. While Des worked, Harlan made his own calls. He contacted Sophie's friends again, but this time asked different questions. Did Sophie ever mention a man named Vito? Did she ever say anything about her mother acting strange? Most responses were dead ends. But then he reached Sophie's best friend, a quiet girl named Mercedes Buck. Mr. Cannon, Mercedes said carefully. Sophie made me promise not to tell anyone. But if she's really missing, tell me. About 2 months ago, Sophie came to school really upset. She said she'd overheard her mom on the phone, talking about moving away, starting over. Sophie thought your marriage was ending, that she'd have to choose between you and her mom. But then, Mercedes's voice dropped. She said she heard something worse. Her mom talking about money, about problems being solved permanently. Sophie was scared, Mr. Cannon. She didn't know what to do. Did she mention a man? Vito. She said her mom was seeing someone. That he came to the house once when you were away on a work trip. Sophie said he gave her the creeps. Called him mom's snake boyfriend. After hanging up, Harlan felt the rage building, cold and controlled. This wasn't heat of the moment fury. This was something more dangerous. The kind of anger that plans, that calculates, that doesn't stop until justice is served. Des looked up from his laptop, his face grim. Found it. Dixon received $20,000 3 days after he closed Sophie's case. Deposited into an account under his wife's name. Wire transfer from the same shell company that owns the Silver Ridge cabin. They paid him to stop looking for my daughter. Gets worse. I pulled traffic camera footage from the night Sophie disappeared. Evelyn's car was captured leaving your neighborhood at 8:47 p.m. She didn't go to the gym. She drove north, towards Silver Ridge. Came back at 2:13 a.m. Harlan closed his eyes, the pieces finally forming a complete picture. Evelyn took her. She and Vito took my daughter to that cabin. They're holding her there. Where they were, Des said quietly. Harlan, It's been 4 weeks. No. Harlan's voice was steel. Sophie left me that note. Past tense. I heard them talking. She wrote it before they took her. Which means she hid it hoping I'd find it. My daughter is smart. She's a fighter. She's alive, and I'm bringing her home. Then we need a plan. A real one. Because if we're wrong, we're not wrong. Harlan stood, grabbing his jacket. But you're right about one thing. We need to be smart. So here's what we do. Chapter 5, Silver Ridge. The cabin sat 3 miles from the main road, accessible only by a narrow dirt path that wound through dense pine forest. Harlan and Des approached on foot, moving with the tactical precision of their military days. It was noon, the sun high but struggling to penetrate the thick canopy. Des had equipped them properly: night vision, lock picks, a drone for reconnaissance, and weapons they both hoped they wouldn't need to use. They'd spent 2 days planning this approach, studying satellite imagery, watching the cabin through the drone's camera. For 48 hours, they'd seen nothing. No movement. No vehicles. No signs of life. But Harlan knew Sophie was there. He could feel it in his bones. They reached the perimeter, a chain-link fence, rusty but intact, with no trespassing signs every 20 feet. Des pulled out wire cutters while Harlan kept watch. The fence fell away silently, and they slipped through. The cabin was larger than it appeared in the photos, 2 stories, with a basement entrance visible around the back. The windows were covered with heavy curtains. A single car sat in the driveway, not Evelyn's Mercedes, but a nondescript Honda Civic with rental plates. Could be a trap, Des whispered, his hand on his sidearm. Could be. Harlan moved toward the basement entrance, his heart hammering. But I'm not leaving without checking. The basement door was locked, but Des had it open in 30 seconds. They descended into darkness, using infrared to navigate. The space was empty, just storage boxes and old furniture. But there was a door at the far end, reinforced with a padlock. Harlan's blood ran cold. You don't padlock a storage room from the outside. Des cut the lock, and Harlan pulled the door open. The room beyond was small, windowless, with a camping cot and a bucket in the corner. A figure lay on the cot, covered by a thin blanket. Sophie. Harlan breathed, rushing forward. But it wasn't Sophie. The girl on the cot was blonde, maybe 19, unconscious or drugged. Her wrists bore rope burns, and she was dangerously thin. Jesus Christ, Des muttered, checking her pulse. She's alive. Barely. Who is she? But even as Harlan asked, he knew. This was Vito's pattern. The widow in Connecticut. The pharmaceutical fraud. He wasn't just a con man. He was something worse. We need to get her out of here, Des said, gently lifting the girl. But Harlan, if she's here, where's Sophie? A sound from above, footsteps on the cabin floor. Voices. Harlan and Des froze, communicating with hand signals honed by years of combat experience. 2 people, maybe 3, moving toward the stairs. They had seconds to decide. Save this girl and risk losing Sophie's trail. Or hide and try to learn where Sophie was. Harlan made the call. They moved into the shadows, Des supporting the unconscious girl, both of them weapons drawn. The basement door opened. Light flooded down the stairs. 2 figures descended, Vito Ibarra and a man Harlan recognized from the police station. Not Dixon, but another cop. Orville Dixon's partner, Lauren Flynn. This is getting messy, Vito said, his voice calm and businesslike. First the daughter, now this one. You said the insurance payment was clean. It is clean, Flynn replied. Dixon made sure of that. But Cannon's not backing off. He hired someone to dig into your background. Then we handle Cannon. Permanently. Vito walked toward the locked room and stopped. The locks cut. Both men drew weapons. Harlan didn't give them time to think. He stepped from the shadows, his gun trained on Vito. Drop it. Both of you. Vito smiled, completely unfazed. Harlan Cannon. You're more resourceful than I gave you credit for. Where's my daughter? Safe. For now. Vito's gun didn't lower. But that depends entirely on your next move. You shoot me, and you'll never find her. She'll die in whatever hole Evelyn has her stashed in. Evelyn doesn't have her, Harlan said, reading the situation. You do. That's your leverage over Evelyn. Keep my daughter alive to keep my wife in line. Make her go through with the plan. Vito's smile widened. Smart man. Too smart. That's always been your problem. Where is Sophie? Let me make you an offer, Vito said. Walk away. Take that girl behind you. She's nobody, a homeless addict we picked up for practice. Take her, save her life, be a hero. In exchange, I'll tell you where Sophie is. You get your daughter back, I get my money, everybody wins. Except the people you murdered for their insurance policies. Alleged murders. Never proven. Vito shrugged. Come on, Cannon. You're a military man. You understand collateral damage. Sometimes people have to die for the greater good. There's nothing good about you. No, Vito agreed. But I'm the only one who knows where Sophie is. So what's it going to be? Des emerged from the shadows, supporting the girl, his own weapon drawn. 3 guns to 2. Bad odds, Ibarra. Flynn's gun swung toward Des. Marine Force Recon, right? I read your file. Desert Storm Hero. But you're not in the desert now, and these aren't insurgents. You kill cops, you're dead men. Ex-cops, Des corrected. You stopped being police when you took a bribe. The standoff hung in the balance. For men with guns, all knowing that whoever fired first would trigger a bloodbath. And somewhere, Sophie's life hung by whatever thread Vito and Evelyn had left her. Then Harlan heard it. A phone ringing upstairs. Once, twice. Then stopped. A signal. Vito's eyes flickered. That's Evelyn. Wondering where I am. If I don't answer, she moves Sophie. And trust me, you won't find the new location. Harlan's finger tightened on the trigger. Every instinct screamed at him to fire, to end this monster. But Sophie, tell me where she is, Harlan said through gritted teeth. Tell me, and I let you walk out of here. Harlan, Des started. I want my daughter more than I want revenge. Tell me where Sophie is, Ibarra. Now, Vito studied him for a long moment. Then he laughed. You know what? I believe you. You'd actually let me go for her. That's love. He lowered his gun slightly. She's in a storage unit. Facility called Secure Space, about 40 miles west of here. Unit 247. Evelyn checks on her every other day. Food, water, just enough to keep her alive until the insurance pays out. How do I know you're telling the truth? You don't. But it's the only offer you're getting. Vito backed toward the stairs. Flynn, we're leaving. Cannon, you've got maybe 2 hours before Evelyn realizes something's wrong and moves her. Clock's ticking. Don't let them leave, Des urged. Harlan, think. But Harlan was already moving, his weapon lowered. Get that girl to a hospital. I'm going to Secure Space. This is a mistake, Des called after him. Maybe. But if there was even a chance Sophie was at that storage facility, Harlan had to take it. He'd find his daughter. Then he'd come back for Vito Ibarra and make him pay for every life he'd destroyed. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Chapter 6. The Truth in Storage. Harlan drove like hell itself was chasing him, the GPS guiding him through winding mountain roads toward Secure Space. His phone rang. Des. The girl's at the hospital, Des reported. She's heavily sedated, but she'll live. Harlan, I called in the cavalry. State police are heading to that cabin, and I've got federal friends interested in Vito's entire operation. But what? I tracked Evelyn's phone. She's not at the storage facility. She's at the Grandview Hotel, the same place she used to meet Vito. Room 1247. Harlan's mind raced. Could be a setup. Vito sends me to the storage unit while Evelyn's actually with Sophie at the hotel. Or Sophie's actually at the storage facility and Evelyn's meeting with someone else. Harlan, you need to make a choice. You can't be 2 places at once. 40 miles to Secure Space. 20 miles back to the hotel. If he chose wrong, Sophie could die. Send someone to the hotel, Harlan decided. Check that room. I'm going to the storage facility. He ended the call and pushed the accelerator harder. The facility appeared 30 minutes later, a sprawling complex of orange units surrounded by fencing. Harlan parked outside and approached the gate. His engineer's mind automatically cataloged the security. Cameras on every corner, keypad entry, guard station unmanned but clearly monitored. He didn't have time for subtlety. He rammed his truck through the chain-link gate, metal screaming as it gave way. Alarms began wailing immediately. Unit 247 was in the back. He could see it from here, a larger unit with a rolling door. Harlan jumped from the truck and ran. His hands shook as he reached the padlock securing the unit door. He shot it off, not caring about noise, not caring about consequences. The door rolled up. Inside was darkness and silence. Sophie. His voice echoed in the empty space. Sophie, baby, it's Dad. Nothing. The unit was empty, just dust and shadows and the death of hope. He'd been played. Vito had sent him on a wild goose chase while His phone rang. Unknown number. Looking for something? Vito's voice, mocking. Did you really think I'd tell you the truth? You let me go, Cannon. Biggest mistake of your life. Where is she? Harlan's voice broke. Please, just tell me where my daughter is. She's somewhere you'll never find her. And in 48 hours, when the insurance pays out, she'll stop being useful. Sorry, Cannon. You gambled and lost. The line went dead. Harlan sank to his knees in that empty storage unit, surrounded by his failure. He'd had Vito. He'd had him at gunpoint, and he'd let him walk away for a lie. Sophie was out there, alone, terrified, and he'd wasted the only chance to. His phone rang again. Des. Harlan, get to the Grandview Hotel. Now. I can't. I need to find Sophie. I need to. Trust me. Room 1247. Get here now. Something in Des's voice cut through Harlan's despair. He ran back to his truck and drove, his mind a hurricane of worst-case scenarios. 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. He burst into the Grandview's lobby, ignored the concierge's protests, and took the stairs 3 at a time to the 12th floor. Room 1247's door was ajar. He pushed it open. Des stood inside, his weapon drawn but pointed at the floor. Evelyn sat on the bed, her face a mess of tears and mascara. And beside her, Sophie, his daughter, turned, her face pale and bruised but alive, so beautifully alive. She launched herself at him, and Harlan caught her, holding on like he'd never let go. Daddy, she sobbed. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sho, baby. You're safe now. You're safe. He looked at Des over Sophie's head, questions burning. She's been here the whole time, Des said quietly. Evelyn wasn't meeting Vito. She was keeping Sophie hidden from him. Harlan looked at his wife, confusion and rage warring inside him. Explain. Now. Evelyn's voice was hollow. I'm not who you think I am. My real name is Henrietta Caldwell. I was married before, to a man named Wiley McDaniel. 10 years ago, Vito Ibarra worked his way into my life, just like he did this time. He convinced me to take out life insurance on Wiley. Said we'd run away together, start fresh. I was young and stupid and thought I loved him. She wiped her eyes, but the tears kept coming. Wiley died in a hiking accident 2 months later. I got $2 million. The police investigated, but Vito had been so careful. They never found evidence. I only realized later that Vito had killed him, staged the whole thing. By then, he'd disappeared with half the money. So you changed your identity, Harlan said slowly. Became Evelyn Bennett. Started over. I thought I'd escaped him. Met you, had Sophie, built a real life. But 3 months ago, he found me. Showed up at the gym with photos, evidence, threats. He said he'd go to the police, tell them I'd hired him to kill my first husband. I'd go to prison for murder. I'd lose everything, lose Sophie. So you agreed to do it again, Harlan said, the pieces falling into place. Help him fake Sophie's death, collect the insurance. No. Evelyn's voice cracked. I refused. So he took Sophie, called me, said if I didn't cooperate, he'd kill her. Make it look like you did it. He had police on his payroll, people who'd make the evidence stick. I had to play along, had to make you think I was part of it, or he'd hurt her. Sophie pulled back from Harlan's embrace, her voice small. Mama's been keeping me safe, Dad. Moving me every few days so Vito couldn't find me. She's been trying to figure out how to stop him without getting us both killed. The divorce, Harlan said. Blaming me. All of it was an act. To convince Vito I was committed to the plan. Evelyn stood, her hands shaking. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know what I've done, what I was part of 10 years ago. But I swear to you, Harlan, I have been trying to protect our daughter. I didn't know how to stop him. Des stepped forward. The blonde girl we found at the cabin, she's awake. She's talking. She's not homeless or an addict. She's Vito's daughter from a previous marriage. He kept her prisoner for months, planning to kill her for her trust fund. She has everything we need. Names, dates, evidence. Vito Ibarra is done. Where is he now? Harlan asked, his voice cold. Police have the cabin surrounded. Flynn's already in custody. But Vito. Des hesitated. He ran. They're searching, but he'll come back, Evelyn said with certainty. He can't leave without the insurance money. And he can't get the insurance money without a death certificate. Without Sophie's body. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. He's coming here, Harlan realized. He knows you've been hiding her. He'll track you down and... The window exploded inward, glass spraying across the room. Harlan threw Sophie behind him as gunfire erupted. Des returned fire, and Harlan saw a figure on the fire escape. Vito, weapon in hand, his face twisted with rage. "You shouldn't have interfered." Vito screamed. "She was mine. The money was mine." He fired again, the bullet taking a chunk out of the doorframe inches from Sophie's head. Harlan's world narrowed to a single point, protecting his daughter. He grabbed Des's backup weapon and fired, driving Vito back toward the fire escape. "Run!" Harlan shouted. "All of you run." But Vito was already climbing higher, heading for the roof. Harlan went after him, his military training overriding fear. 12 stories up, the wind whipping around them, the two men faced each other across the rooftop. "You really want to die for them?" Vito called over the wind. "For a wife who helped me kill her first husband? For a daughter who's going to grow up knowing her mother's a murderer?" "Whatever Evelyn did, she's trying to make it right," Harlan said, circling slowly. "You'll never understand that. You're a predator who sees people as assets. You don't understand love or loyalty or sacrifice. I understand winning." Vito raised his weapon. "And you just lost." The gunshot cracked across the rooftop, but it wasn't Vito's gun that fired. Detective Orville Dixon stood in the rooftop access doorway, his service weapon smoking. Beside him were state police, federal agents, and a very much alive Lauren Flynn in handcuffs. Vito staggered, his own weapon clattering to the ground. He looked down at the blood spreading across his chest, then up at Dixon with betrayal in his eyes. Dixon said flatly, "Then you made me look like an idiot." "Nobody does that." Vito collapsed. Paramedics rushed forward, but Harlan could see it was too late. Some wounds don't heal. Later, as dawn broke over the city, Harlan sat in the hospital waiting room with Sophie sleeping against his shoulder and Evelyn across from them, a police officer stationed discreetly nearby. Des brought coffee, terrible hospital coffee that tasted like salvation. "Evelyn's cooperating fully," Des reported quietly. "DA's office is working out a deal. She'll testify against the whole network, Dixon, Flynn, Vito's other associates. In exchange, she might avoid prison time. Supervised probation, community service, but she gets to stay with Sophie." Harlan looked at his wife, the stranger who'd lied to him, who'd been part of a murder, who'd spent 3 months protecting their daughter at the cost of everything else. He didn't know if their marriage could survive this. Didn't know if he could forgive. But she'd kept Sophie alive. In the end, when it mattered most, she'd chosen their daughter over everything. "We'll figure it out," he said quietly. "One day at a time." Sophie stirred against him, her voice sleepy. "Dad, I'm here, baby. Can we go home?" Harlan looked around, at the sterile hospital, at the police and lawyers and wreckage of their lives. Home seemed very far away, but they were together. They were alive. And that was enough. "Yeah, sweetheart," he said, holding her closer. "Let's go home." Chapter 7, Aftermath. 3 weeks later, Harlan stood in a courtroom, watching as Orville Dixon was led away in handcuffs. Corruption, accessory to kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder. The charges would keep him locked away for decades. Lauren Flynn had already pled guilty, singing like a canary about the whole operation. Vito Ibarra had survived the rooftop, barely. Now he sat in a maximum security hospital ward, awaiting trial for a list of charges that spanned 3 states and 15 years. His daughter, freed from her captivity, had become the prosecution's star witness. The predator had finally been caught. But for Harlan, justice felt incomplete. He'd learned more in the last 3 weeks than he'd wanted to know. Vito hadn't been working alone. He'd been part of a larger network. Insurance fraud spanning multiple states, involving lawyers, doctors, corrupt cops, and desperate people willing to do terrible things for money. Evelyn had been both victim and accomplice, caught in a web she'd helped weave. Sophie was in therapy now, processing her trauma. She'd been kept in isolation for 3 weeks, not physically harmed, but psychologically tormented. Evelyn had moved her every few days, trying to stay ahead of Vito while maintaining the illusion that she was cooperating with his plan. It had been a desperate gambit, and it had almost cost them everything. "Mr. Cannon?" The prosecutor, Marlon Mooney, who'd switched sides once he'd realized Evelyn was a witness rather than a defendant, approached. "We need to discuss your wife's testimony." "Ex-wife," Harlan corrected automatically. The divorce papers had been finalized, though they'd agreed to share custody of Sophie. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. Right? Well, she's been incredibly cooperative. Without her testimony, we wouldn't have half these convictions. The DA is recommending supervised probation, no jail time. She'd be eligible to have her record expunged after 5 years if she completes all requirements. She should face consequences, Harlan said. She was part of a murder 10 years ago. She was a 22-year-old woman manipulated by a sociopath. She spent the last decade living under a false identity, terrified of being found. And when Vito did find her, she chose to protect her daughter instead of herself. That counts for something. Harlan didn't respond. He was still processing his own feelings, the betrayal, the lies, the fact that the woman he'd loved for 18 years had never really existed. Evelyn Bennett was a fiction. Henrietta Caldwell had been hiding behind that mask the whole time. But she'd saved Sophie. That counted for something. There's something else, Mooney continued. We've been investigating Vito's finances. He had money stashed everywhere. Offshore accounts, shell companies, properties and false names. The courts are seizing it all, but there's a victim compensation fund. You and Sophie are eligible. So are his other victims' families. I don't want his blood money. Think of it as Sophie's college fund. Therapy fund. Whatever you need to help her heal. Mooney handed him a card. Just think about it. After the prosecutor left, Harlan found Des waiting in the hallway. His old friend had stayed through the entire ordeal, helping coordinate with law enforcement, providing evidence, making sure the whole rotten network came crashing down. You look like hell, Des observed. Feel worse. Harlan managed a weak smile. But we got them. All of them. Most of them. There are still people out there. Others Vito worked with, other victims we haven't found. This was bigger than we thought. But it's over. For us, anyway. Sophie's safe. Evelyn's facing consequences. The bad guys are in jail. That's a win. Is it? Des studied him. You don't look like someone who won. Harlan leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. I got my daughter back. That's all that matters. Everything else. He shrugged. We'll figure it out. And Evelyn? What about her? You still love her. Don't pretend you don't. I love who I thought she was. Turns out that person never existed. People are complicated, Des said. She made terrible choices. But she spent 10 years trying to be better. And when it came down to it, she chose Sophie over everything. Her freedom, her life, everything. That's real. That's worth something. Harlan didn't answer. He couldn't. Because Des was right. Part of him still loved Evelyn. Or Henrietta. Or whoever she really was beneath all the lies. And that made him furious at himself. I should check on Sophie, he said, pushing off the wall. She's at therapy. Harlan. Des grabbed his arm. Take some time. Process this. Don't make any decisions while you're still in crisis mode. You've been running on adrenaline and rage for a month. Eventually, you're going to crash. I'll crash later. Right now, my daughter needs me. He walked away before Des could argue, because he knew his friend was right. The crash was coming. The moment when everything caught up with him. The fear, the betrayal, the knowledge that he'd almost lost Sophie forever. But not yet. Not while Sophie still needed him to be strong. Chapter 8. Sophie's Choice. The therapy office was bright and welcoming, with soft furniture and abstract art that was probably meant to be calming. Harlan sat in the waiting room, flipping through a magazine he wasn't reading, waiting for Sophie's session to end. The door opened, and his daughter emerged with Dr. Matilda Cobb, a specialist in trauma counseling. Sophie looked better than she had 3 weeks ago, color back in her face, less hollow around the eyes. But Harlan could see the damage Vito had done. His daughter was different now, older somehow, marked by an experience no 16-year-old should have to endure. Dad. Sophie sat beside him while Dr. Cobb spoke with Evelyn, who'd come separately, maintaining the careful distance the courts had mandated. Can we talk? Always. Not here. Can we go somewhere? They ended up at their old spot, a coffee shop near Sophie's school where they used to meet after robotics practice. She ordered her usual, hot chocolate with extra whipped cream, and Harlan saw a flash of his little girl in that simple gesture. I've been thinking, Sophie said, wrapping her hands around the mug. About Mom. About everything. You paid me, D. Sophie, let me finish. She met his eyes, and Harlan saw strength there. I was so angry at her. For lying, for being part of what happened to her first husband, for putting us in danger. But Dr. Cobb helped me understand something. Mom made a terrible mistake when she was young. But she spent my entire life trying to make up for it. That doesn't excuse. I know, but it means something, doesn't it? That she's been trying. Sophie took a breath. When Vito took me, I was terrified. But Mom, Dad, she saved my life. She put herself between me and him, over and over. She could have run, could have saved herself. But she stayed, and she kept me safe. Harlan felt his throat tighten. I know, baby. I want her in my life. I know you're hurt, and I know you might never forgive her. But I need my mom. Even knowing everything she did, I still need her. You'll have her. The custody agreement. That's not what I mean. Sophie leaned forward. I mean us. As a family. I know you're divorced now, and maybe you can't be married anymore. But can we at least try to be something? Not strangers passing each other at pickup and drop-off. Harlan looked at his daughter, brave, compassionate, wiser than her years. She'd survived a nightmare, and instead of breaking, she was choosing forgiveness. Choosing healing. We can try, he said finally. I can't promise it'll be easy. I can't promise I'll be able to forgive your mother completely. But for you, I'll try. Sophie's smile was like sunrise. That's all I'm asking. They talked for another hour, about school, about robotics, about normal teenage things. Slowly, Harlan felt the weight lifting. His daughter was here, alive, healing. That was enough. When they finally left, Harlan found Evelyn waiting outside the coffee shop. She looked uncertain, vulnerable in a way he'd never seen during their marriage. Sophie told me what you talked about, she said. Thank you for agreeing to try. This doesn't mean. I know what I've lost. I know I can never have back what we had. Her voice cracked. I destroyed it. I destroyed us. But if I can have even a small piece of my daughter's life, if I can somehow make up for what I've done. You saved her, Harlan said quietly. That counts for something. It doesn't erase the past, but it counts. They stood in awkward silence, two people who'd shared a life, but were now strangers. Finally, Evelyn spoke again. For what it's worth, the person I was with you, that was real. Henrietta Caldwell made a terrible choice. But Evelyn Cannon loved you. Loved Sophie. That part wasn't a lie. Harlan wanted to believe her. Part of him did. But trust, once shattered, was nearly impossible to rebuild. I should go, he said. Sophie has homework. As he walked away with his daughter, Evelyn called out one last time. Harlan? Thank you. For everything. For not giving up on finding her. He didn't turn around, but he nodded. It was all he could offer. Chapter 9, Rebuilding. 6 months later, Harlan stood in the auditorium of Sophie's school, watching his daughter receive the Regional Robotics Championship trophy. She'd missed months of practice, months of preparation, but she'd fought her way back. The team had rallied around her, supporting her through the trauma and the recovery. As Sophie held the trophy high, her face radiant with achievement, Harlan felt pride swell in his chest. She'd survived. More than that, she'd thrived. Evelyn sat 3 rows behind him. The custody agreement kept them at a careful distance during public events. But when Sophie came off the stage, she hugged them both, bridging the gap with teenage determination. We did it, Dad. She was practically vibrating with excitement. The judges loved our bridge design. They said it was innovative. You're brilliant, Harlan said, meaning it. Just like I always knew you were. Mom helped, Sophie said quickly. She drove me to practices when you were working late. She quizzed me on formulas. She was there. Harlan met Evelyn's eyes over their daughter's head. She'd kept every promise she'd made. Therapy, community service, supervised visits that had gradually become unsupervised as she'd proven herself trustworthy. She was working now at a nonprofit helping domestic violence victims, trying to make amends for her past by helping others escape theirs. Thank you, he said to her, meaning it. Later, at the celebratory dinner Sophie had requested at Luigi's, the Italian restaurant where Evelyn had met Vito, now reclaimed as a happy memory instead of a painful one, they sat together as a family. Not the family they'd been, but something new, something rebuilt from the ruins. Des joined them, bringing his new girlfriend, Rebecca Spence, of all people. The lawyer who'd threatened Harlan had switched sides completely once she'd learned the truth, providing evidence that helped dismantle Vito's network. She and Des had bonded over their shared love of digging up dirt on bad people. To Sophie, Des raised his glass. May all your bridges be strong and your victories be many. To family, Sophie countered, looking between her parents. Imperfect, complicated, but ours. They clinked glasses, even Harlan and Evelyn, tentatively, carefully. There was no romance there anymore, no lingering love. But there was respect. There was forgiveness, slowly earned and carefully maintained. And there was Sophie, the bridge between them, stronger than either of them had known. As the dinner wound down, Harlan's phone buzzed. A news alert. Vito Ibarra sentenced to life without parole. The trial had finally concluded. Justice at last. He showed Sophie the headline. She read it, then nodded firmly. Good. He can't hurt anyone else now. No, Harlan agreed. He can't. That night, driving Sophie home to his apartment, she still split her time between his place and Evelyn's, maintaining relationships with both parents. His daughter spoke up from the passenger seat. Dad, I'm writing an essay for English class. About resilience. About how people rebuild after trauma. She paused. Can I interview you? About how you never gave up looking for me. Sophie, I'm not a hero. You saved me, she interrupted. When everyone else said I ran away, when the police gave up, when it seemed hopeless, you didn't stop. You found that note. You tracked down the clues. You rescued Vito's daughter. You brought down a criminal network. How is that not heroic? Harlan pulled into the parking lot, but didn't get out of the car. He turned to face his daughter, this brave, brilliant girl who'd survived so much. You want to know what I learned? He asked. I learned that the strongest structures aren't the ones that never bend. They're the ones that bend and don't break. You bent, baby. We all did. But we didn't break. That's resilience. Sophie smiled. That beautiful smile that reminded him why he'd fought so hard. Can I quote you on that? Only if you promise me something. What? Promise me that whatever happens, whatever life throws at you, you'll remember how strong you are. You survived something that would have destroyed most people. You came out the other side still kind, still compassionate, still fighting. That's not just resilience. That's courage. I promise, Dad. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Sophie spoke again, quieter now. Do you think you'll ever forgive Mom? Really forgive her? Harlan considered the question carefully. I think forgiveness is a process, not a moment. But am I trying? Yes. For you, and for myself. Carrying anger just weighs you down. Your mom made terrible choices. But she spent every day since trying to make better ones. That has to count for something. Do you still love her? I love the mother she is to you. I respect the woman she's trying to become. Is that the same as being in love? No. But it's enough. It's more than I thought I'd have 6 months ago. Sophie nodded, processing. I'm glad you're trying. That's all I wanted. As they headed upstairs, Harlan's phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Evelyn. Thank you for tonight. For letting me be part of her victory. It means everything. He typed back. She's our daughter. We'll always share that. A pause. Then, I know I can never make this right. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying. Harlan looked at the message for a long time before responding. I know. And that's why Sophie chose to forgive you. She sees you trying. So do I. He pocketed his phone and looked up at the stars visible through the city lights. Somewhere out there, Vito Ibarra was beginning his life sentence. Dixon and Flynn were facing justice. The victims were healing, supported by compensation funds and therapy, and the knowledge that their tormentors had been stopped. And here, in this small apartment with his daughter doing homework at the kitchen table, Harlan Cannon had won the only victory that mattered. His family was broken, but healing. His daughter was safe. The nightmare was over. They'd been bent. They'd almost broken, but they'd survived. And sometimes, that was the greatest triumph of all. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.